So, hello and welcome. I'm going to start talking tonight with Graham Plattner, partly because he's in the news, but partly because the reason he's in the news just really ties nicely into what I wanted to talk about. So, looking at what's happening with Graham Plattner, because what's unfolding around him isn't an isolated incident, it's a reflection of something that we as white people have been doing for a long time. His story aligns directly with what I came here to talk about, the way we ignore the red flags in our own speech, our own beliefs, and our own actions, especially when it comes to race. And I know some people expect that, if I came here to talk about Graham Plattner, the focus would be on the assault allegations. But let's be honest with ourselves, the warning signs were already there. They were visible in the racist tattoo, the racist comments, the casual entitlement, and true to form, we let it slide. And I know it may not seem like the racist comments are tied to assault, but by not facing the truth about the racial entitlements, the assault allegations were not vetted or looked at deeply. And people failed to see what was right in front of their eyes, that they had a bad candidate. And I'm sorry, I have dogs in a very small apartment. We let it slide because he fit a familiar template. Blue eyes, sandy hair, white skin, and that fight for the little guy swagger that makes someone feel safe to us even when they shouldn't. Plattner isn't the point. The point is the mirror he holds up to us. And tonight I want to talk about something that's been weighing on me for a really long time. And honestly, it should have been weighing on the country too. And I think in a lot of cases it has been. And I think we're at a time now when people really want to hear, and hopefully we'll get something out of this. So there's been a lot in the news about ending birthright citizenship, rolling back civil rights protections, and weakening the laws that guard our voting rights. And with the Supreme Court's recent decision, Congress now has a clearer path to try again. If they change federal voting laws, it becomes a 1-2 punch, one aimed directly at Black political power and at the ability of Black Americans to control their destiny in this country. And if you think they'll stop with Black Americans, you better guess again. They'll be going for anybody that doesn't fit their idea of what American looks like: transgender, white women, Black and brown people. And so I want to be very clear. We didn't get here by accident. We got here through denial. We got here through the stories we told ourselves and the stories we refused to tell. Tonight, I want to talk about how language carried us to this moment, how the United States didn't just commit racial violence, it managed it through words. We got here by not seeing, not accepting how deeply we bought into mythology, grievance, and outright ignorance about the suffering of entire groups of people. Native Americans were pushed to the fringe, physically, politically, spiritually. Brown people, Asians, Middle Eastern, Latinos, living in the background of the minds of white people were tolerated or mostly ignored at best. And yet, when the opportunity arose, they too suffered at the hands of the privileged. But Black Americans were embedded. Their labor built the country. Their bodies built the economy. Their culture shaped the nation. And yet the language we used, the national vocabulary, erased that truth. And we still use that language to today. It's been changed. Some of it, a lot of people are more aware, more woke, but it still runs through our country among millions and millions of people. So this is where the Confederacy comes in, because the Confederacy didn't just fight a war, it built a story so powerful that it still shapes our politics today. The Confederacy's first weapon was language. If we go back into our history, not for a lesson, but for clarity, we can see that during slavery, brutality was wrapped in soft words. Oh, it's civilization, it's our Christian duty, it creates order. And then the worst of the worst, it's domestic management. These weren't neutral terms. They were linguistic armor, and they were used on a daily basis, and they were used to describe just how to protect themselves and to protect their feelings about the kind of mistreatment they were impinging on other people, on an entire race of people. So these weren't neutral terms. They were linguistic armor, a way to make violence sound like responsibility. And my guess is that they were using those words to convince themselves that they were good people and that they were a people that were good with God, righteous and benevolent. And that lie was baked into the words. And after the Civil War, when the Confederacy lost on the battlefield, it regrouped on the page. It regrouped in pulpits. It regrouped in school books. It regrouped in the fog of memory. This is the era we call redemption. When the gains of Reconstruction were rolled back and the Confederacy went underground, and the weapon they used was language. The language they created was drunken Negroes, black misrule, states' rights, heritage, tradition, my favorite, and the crown jewel, the lost cause. And the lost cause was a symbolic story that the South used to tell themselves that indeed they had never lost the Civil War and that they were the righteous race of people and that they were patriots and they were honest and self-serving and self-aggrandizing. The lost cause wasn't nostalgia. It was propaganda. It was a linguistic counter-revolution designed to erase slavery, justify segregation, and sanctify treason because the Confederates were fighting against their own government. They tried to create a new government to justify that they were fighting against their own government, but in fact, they were trying to overthrow the government of the United States of America. So let's be clear about that. These people were not patriots in any way, shape, or form. They were attacking the government of the United States of America. So it turned Confederates into heroes. It turned enslavers into caretakers. It turned Black Americans into threats. This is the fog of the Confederacy, of the racist, of Trump. A fog that lifts with sunlight, but a lie that has lingered. And then the Confederacy learned to speak in code. As the country moved into the 20th century, explicit racism became less socially acceptable, so the language adopted. Violence became policy. Hatred became bureaucracy. Segregation became neighborhood character. And oppression became law and order. Racial fear became welfare dependency. Racial fear became welfare dependency. The Confederacy didn't die, it learned to speak in code. Dog whistles replaced slurs, silence replaced accountability, and the fabric of American life, schools, housing, policing, voting, was stitched with those coded words. So while we were teaching our children, while we were developing housing zones, while the police were going after criminals, and while we were voting, those words were used to hide some disturbing truths. And those truths were white people were superior, white people were privileged, and white people deserved to have all the power. Then there was a backlash. At some point in time, there was a backlash against naming the truth, because if we fast forward to the late 20th century, when people finally began naming the hidden intent behind those dog whistles, when they said, no, this isn't about crime, this is about race. Or maybe they said it like this: no, this isn't about crime, this is about race. Or maybe they said, no, this isn't about heritage, this is about white supremacy. The backlash from the right came hard. Suddenly, political correctness was the enemy. Cancel culture was the threat. They would say, you're too sensitive, you're reading too much into it. What a snowflake. Racism is over. We're colorblind now. And this, it's about content of character. And that, my friends, is a dog whistle in a dog whistle. Because according to the racist, the only group of character is white people. So when they said it's about content of character, they were directly saying to each other, it's about white people. But that backlash wasn't about free speech. And let me back up even more. When they said it's about content of character, they were saying we only want white people, because only white people have the character that we're looking for. All other people are of lesser character. So I wanted to get that off my chest. But the backlash from the right wasn't about free speech. All of those claims they made about cancel culture, all of those claims they made about political correctness, all of the things they said about us being snowflakes was about protecting the old language, which was power. It was the old power. It was about keeping the fog thick enough that the Confederacy could continue breathing through the cracks. And then came DEI and the DEI reversal, and the old playbook took on new clothes. The 60s brought about equal opportunity laws, imperfect. Yes, they seemed a little discriminatory, but without them, discrimination against Black folks would have run rampant. There would have been no power for Black folks at all. There would have been no equal opportunity. But by the 90s and the early 2000s, the same voices who declared racism dead began voting in people who overturned those laws. Then they attacked diversity, equity, and inclusion, claiming that DEI was racist against white people. And trust me, if you can see it right now, as soon as DEI went away, people didn't hire as many Black people. The amount of people being able to apply, not just able to apply to schools, but the racial quotas are all skewed now. I better stop. Reverse racism is not a thing. Reverse racism is the claim of a failed attempt to the return to the Confederacy. It's the whine of fear at the prospect of a robust, diverse country governed by free people of color. That's the same linguistic inversion used during redemption. Oppressors become victims, victims become threats, justice becomes discrimination, equality becomes division. And you can see it happening right now, and see it happening day to day. It gets worse. The Confederacy's vocabulary never left. It just changed outfits. And today, the past is speaking through our laws. And now we're here. Birthright citizenship is under attack. Voting rights are under attack. Civil rights protections under attack. Election laws under attack. These aren't isolated events. They are the modern expression of the same linguistic strategy that justified slavery, redemption, Jim Crow, and the Lost Cause. We are living inside the vocabulary of our past. And unless we name the truth clearly, we will repeat it. Not because we want to, but because the language keeps pulling us back. So, in my closing, I want to call for clarity. Because this isn't about fear, it's about clarity. We're at a moment where the past is no longer behind us. It's speaking through our laws right now. It's speaking through our politics and our national story. And the only way forward is to tell the truth plainly, without euphemism, without mythology, without the comfort of old lies. The fog lifts, but the lie lingers. And tonight I'm naming it because it can no longer name us. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. And you can just breathe. And you can find me at obimaya.substack.com. And my handles on Instagram and Facebook are Just Breathe. Thanks a lot for listening. And I hope this made a dent in something or enlightened you just a tiny, tiny bit. Have a great night. Bye now.